I'm going to bring up Rick Rubin, actually. Rick Rubin is a good example.
Yeah.
And I brought him up before, but he said something. I came across another clip of him, which I thought was really a really interesting.
Have you seen his book, by the way?
Have I seen it?
Yeah.
There's an audio book, right?
Well, there's an actual book also. I just ordered it.
No, I know. I can imagine. I've just seen clips, and I've seen like audio snippets, probably from the book.
Okay, cool. Anyway, whatever.
No, but he said, I'm very careful about advice. I'm very careful about giving advice.
Wait, can you say it the way he said?
I can't.
I'm very careful.
So I'm very careful about giving advice. Whenever you find yourself, I can't really do it, but it's very deep, very measured.
Very slow.
Very slow. I don't have the right articulations, and I don't have the right exact way to talk about it. But I'm kind of getting it. I'm finding it somewhere.
You have to either be making...
I was vegan for 20 years, and I wouldn't... But he was just...
You have to either close your eyes or make eye contact very intensely.
Can we do a quick meditation just to get here? Let's just get here. That was the first time for me, too. He basically talks about the dangers of advice of any kind, which is sort of always my issue with him, where in some respects he's very much an authority on how to do things, but his main advice is always like, show up and do the work, but do it your own way. Always do it your own way, because the original point we were saying is that if I give advice on what worked for me, that may not work for you. It doesn't always translate because everybody's experience is so different. So maybe the principles of being consistent, showing up, putting in the hours, putting in the time. I saw a snippet of one of his from his book that says, every creative process, every project you do is just an experiment. And when you're finished with it, no matter what happens with it, use it as fuel for the next project and move on and go to the next project and go to the next project. In the world of making stuff, just make stuff, and don't overthink it, and don't try to imagine what it can do and what it can't do and all these, and overthinking. Mm-hmm. But I'm kind of scrambling his point. His main point about advice and being weary or hesitant to give advice is, yeah, I did it this way. These were the steps I took. And there's so many people who say, so this is how to do it now as a standard. And the point is, you watch the Louis C.K. clip who did it this way by hustling and getting pitch meetings with networks. That's not the way now. Now there's a new way. There's a new set of opportunities, new platforms to build an audience, to make art, to do things. So the same principles apply as time moves on, but the different ways to do it evolve constantly, and it doesn't always mean you follow advice. Yeah. So I found that interesting. Like, I don't like advice.
Yeah. You got to be really careful who you take advice from.
It's not even who you take advice from, just like the idea of advice, the idea that somebody did it a certain way, so this is how to do it now. You can actually mimic exactly their process. I very much default to advice. It's very helpful amongst the clutter of things. Yeah. But I think his main point was that, like, I did it a certain way and it worked. Does that mean it would work again and it's repeatable? How could I possibly say that?
His point is maybe also a little bit of like, advice is supposed to get you towards some kind of end goal, and the creative process is not necessarily geared towards an end goal if you're doing it
results oriented.
Yeah, it's just that is the goal to be doing it. So like, why are you trying to learn how to finish?
Yes, that's or you're trying to finish and move on, but you're not trying to beyond that. Like, you've created it. It's done. Right. And that's the goal. You've accomplished it. You've accomplished what you did by making it. Right. That's probably a part of it too. I just found it interesting that, like, in the world of content that's all advice driven, want to know 5 steps that you can improve and this and this and this. Yeah. And then people wonder why it doesn't work. It's like, but I do give advice. I think advice does work.
Well, there's principles. There's parts of the process that are results, or like YouTube thumbnails. That's a good thing to get advice for. Yeah. Because like, there's a way to do it and there's a way not to do it, and because it's responding to, an algorithm, like how to make the YouTube video. Maybe that's less.
Or, I hear the Gary Vee in my brain and the Rick Rubin, and I'm interested to hear what they would say to each other.
Yeah, me too.
Because Gary Vee is constantly giving advice.
Gary Vee would just talk for an hour straight, and Rick Rubin would listen.
I wonder what they would say to each other, and they'd probably agree. Yeah. You know what I mean? They'd probably be like, absolutely, I totally agree. Like, advice is totally overrated, but also underrated shit. Like, I wonder what they would say to each other, because they're clearly coming from seemingly different positions. Gary Vee's always giving advice. But his advice is show up and do the work, which is not advice. It's just a principle.
And it's not that different than Rick Rubin. I heard a great podcast with Rick Rubin and Brian Koppelman, who's the guy who...
Writer, right?
He's a writer. He wrote Billions with his partner,
Mm-hmm.
and he just signed probably an enormous contract with Paramount to do Millions, Trillions, and Billions Miami. He's like now is like a super producer.
What is that?
So
What's Millions, Trillions,
Paramount Plus, they kind of combined with Showtime. So now they're called Paramount and Showtime. That's the name, Paramount and Showtime.
Oh my God.
And they just sort of announced,
Of all the writers in the room, can we think of another title?
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
I think someone said something smart that their contracts with the cable companies stipulate they need to be providing something called Showtime.
Right.
So if Showtime's in the name, they're like allowed to do it or something.
Paramount Plus presented by Showtime. It's probably something like that.
No, it's called literally Paramount and Showtime.
Okay.
That's what it's called, Paramount and Showtime. And so they just announced a new strategy, and their new strategy is like what all the companies are doing now, which is like, we know it works and we're gonna scale that, and we know Billions is great. So we just gave these guys are doing spin-offs, a show called Millions about people who are one day going to be billionaires, but this is how they made their first million. A show called Trillions, who are like even people richer than the Billions people, and a show called Billions Miami, where it's billions but in Miami. It's like absurd. It's absurd.
That sounds like parody.
But it sounds like parody. But Brian Kaufman's very smart. I listened to his podcast. I made the mistake once.
What if we bought 2 planes? Yeah, I wonder. I mean, they're going off the success, but Billions. I haven't watched the show. So.
Billions. It's a fun show. It's a fun show, and it's
Paul Giamatti.
It's good. Yeah.
I don't really have an impression. That's an impression of an impression.
Paul
Giamatti.
That was a good face. You got the face down.
Giamatti. You know, when an impressionist cracks, it shouts to Matt Friend, actually. He's an impressionist friend, contemporary comedian. He cracked Paul Giamatti. that. Once you see someone do it, you're like, that's what it is.
But anyway, Brian
he
has a good podcast, and he had Rick Rubin on.
Oh.
And Brian, this was when the book came out, and he said this was like 2 or 3 years ago, and Rick Rubin was just starting to formulate like some of his like rules or whatever, or his guidelines. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, I'm actually thinking of writing a book about it. And so he's like, it's cool to listen back to a guy who hadn't yet figured out how to articulate it all, and now he figured it out, and it's all in a book.
You
now.
saw the precursor, like the
seed.
The precursor,
yeah, of him being like, yeah, well, I guess here's what I do, and then he kind of says it, and now you hear him talk, and he has like a paragraph about it, like he knows exactly how to talk about it, which is really cool. But it was a cool interview because Brian Kaufman is like super, and if you watch Billions, you can tell he's like super obsessed with like winners. And like people who get up in the morning and like play a game as viciously as they can to like beat the other people. He's obsessed with people who like have like won. He like loves that. And you can see he struggles with it himself. So he's talking to Rick Rubin, and he keeps bringing it back to like how do you win? How do you like accomplish? How do you succeed? And Rick Rubin it kept going like, that's not the point. It's something you say, like the point is not to succeed. The point is to keep getting to do it over and over and over again. And like you hear Brian Kaufman be like, oh, right, of course. But like, it's clearly not how he thinks.
Right.
And it was a cool conversation. And now
that in doing it, you've won. That's the Rick Rubin point. Right. Away. Like, it's not, he doesn't think in terms of that language, but it's like winning is doing it. And to the extent that you can keep allowing yourself to do it, you're winning. And you don't measure it in these like random goalposts.
He said something actually to the point we made in those reels about, he said you shouldn't really listen to other people's like opinion. You should just, if you like it, then it's good. I think he clarified a little bit in that conversation.
What'd he say?
So he said like, he gets paid for his taste. So when he likes something, it's finished. That's what he gets paid for. And I think what he clarified was he doesn't really care if other people like it. It just so happens that
his taste
he's a genius, and he works with geniuses. Yeah. So when they both like something, other people like it too. But I think what he clarified was even if they didn't like it, that wouldn't be a failure to me. He said he went into
even if who didn't like it,
the public. So he said he went into the office of the CEO of Def Jam Records with the record for 99 Problems, and he's like, here's the new thing, and the guys and the CEO was like, well, that's not going to be a hit. That's not a single. And Rick Rubin's like, all right, I like it, whatever. Do whatever you do. And he's like, and so Brian Kaufman was like, but didn't that piss you off? Weren't you like so happy when it became the biggest song in America? And he's like, I haven't thought about it since. He's like, I don't think like that. Like, he's like, I liked it, and that was the end for me. And Brian Koppelman's like, come on, dude. And he's like, really? He's like, that doesn't enter my mind. And I think that's the answer, because, like, you know, if he weren't a genius, he would just.
But what
be
if
poor.
99 Problems sounded like dog shit? He'd be poor.
But it didn't, because what he.
I'm saying it very well could.
If it did, he'd be poor, and he
And
would
he'd be
seemingly be happy.
That's what he says. Or I am curious. What if 99 Problems actually sounded awful? It doesn't.
Like, Rick, this is
now again. He clarified too that in an extended interview I saw, I think it might have been Lex Fridman or might have been Anderson Cooper on 60 Minutes. He was like, and I've worked with artists that don't have commercial success, and I'm proud of the work I've done with them too.
Right.
You know, so he has all these other projects that we don't know about because we don't know about them. They're not so commercially huge, but he's proud of that work. And I was like, interesting. Okay. He does what he likes. And then Anderson Cooper said, like, do you play an instrument? No. Do you know how to do a soundboard? He's like, I have no technical ability whatsoever.
Is that true?
That's what, and he's like, do you know anything about music? Do you understand music? He's like, not really, no, very basic, but I have no technical ability whatsoever. That's kind of, I have no technical ability whatsoever. So why are you paid? What do they pay you for? I have a very strong sensibility about what I like, and I get my taste. I come in for my taste, and he's able to hear things and do things and say, like, I like that. He's paid for his instincts. And I don't know how somebody has no technical ability as a producer, because producers involve a lot of technical ability. Maybe he needs somebody to execute all of his things. Like, we need a reverb here. That I don't know if he can. How can you speak that language if you? I don't know what that means. Yeah, but he said, I have no technical ability whatsoever. I'm like,
I watched.
What?
So I watched this clip on this video on YouTube of, it was like Jay-Z records 99 Problems with Rick Rubin.
I saw that too.
Yeah, it's like some kind of pirated thing. Yeah. So, but before he was like a celebrity producer, like
he was a celebrity producer,
but not to me. Like,
he did the Chili Peppers, Blood Sugar Sex Magic.
But I didn't know that,
because people didn't follow producers and that kind of thing.
Well, saying he was in the video for 9 Problems, and he says, "You're crazy for this one, Rick," and everyone's like, "Oh, who's Rick?"
I always knew who that was.
I didn't know who it was.
Well, you're a loser.
So whatever.
Yes, you crazy for this one, Rick.
Yeah, he's going through his studio.
He's like, he doesn't write anything down. You ever notice that? Doesn't write a thing down.
Yeah, I've never seen any artist do that. Yeah. So Jay-Z's going through his studio, and he's just basically like, he's like, yo, like, you guys don't know Rick Rubin? He's just a weird guy. He's like, he makes good music, but he's a weird fucking guy.
That's what Jay-Z said?
Yeah, and now it's like, it's everything he does is like cool, but he's like they're planning like a Buddhist festival upstairs. Like, this guy's got a stuffed bison in his apartment. Who is this guy? I don't know, but he makes good music. But he's just a weird guy.
Right. Well, one of his famous records was Blood Sugar Sex Magic. The Chili Peppers record is one of the biggest records ever.
Right.
You know, Under the Bridge.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he invented hip hop.
Feel like I don't ever. All that stuff.
Yeah. You know, he invented the Beastie Boys. Is his project.
Oh yeah. It goes back to
he invented like modern hip hop. He's like,
he did Rage Against the Machine too. I mean, everything.
He did the Avid. So there was an Avid Brothers documentary. You saw it?
I think I saw that. He was involved in that. I saw clips.
Oh, so there's this moment where they record. It's in a like the most beautiful song.
Yes.
And like it looks like they got it in like one take. It was just the most like
live
raw thing. Yeah. And did you saw it in the?
Remind me, because I
so
did.
It's called like maybe. No hard feelings.
Yeah.
No hard feelings.
Keep going, Michael. Michael, keep singing.
And so they recorded, and it's like you could see like the everything came out of them, and then Rick Rubin, like, they get it, and then he goes, "All right, guys, let's move on to the next one." And they're like, "We need a minute," and they go outside, and they're like, "Yo, what the fuck is up with Rick? Like, did he not just get that? Like, we just gotta like decompress after that."
Yeah.
And they were like pissed at him for like not.
We have talked about this exact thing before.
Oh, yeah.
Either you and me, or it's me and someone.
And so he talks about it now in interviews, because then he saw the documentary. He's like, I was inside, I didn't realize they were pissed at me. But it goes back to how he thinks. He's like, I was like,
amazing.
He's like, I'm amazing. Let's keep going.
Yes.
Like, that's the point. We're here. Let's keep creating from here.
Michael, I'm having deja vu, because
it's possible we talked about it on the podcast,
or on at some point.
Yeah.
He's like, I was thinking we're in the right space. Well, let's keep in this creative space perfect. And I was so happy, but he didn't emote or something.
Yeah. He's like, I guess I don't think he thought he needed to explain it to them.